"We're not bankrolling this farce," my mother declared, her tone even, slicing, absolute. My marriage dreams, my tomorrow, all wiped away in a single breath. My sibling didn't even flinch. "Tough break this round," she tossed in, grinning as if it were harmless banter. Father remained mute, just like he did whenever she dictated my worth. I might have yelled, but instead, I uttered a single term, "Got it," and stepped away. They figured I'd shatter. They assumed I'd slink back as usual. Yet 3 weeks on, as their reality began to crumble, they at last grasped what that term truly implied. And it kicked off with just one ring. From the surface, my household appeared as the sort others coveted. Solid home, gleaming grins. Weekly suppers nobody skipped. But beneath, each chuckle carried a condition. My mom, Karen, shaped our existence around dominance. How we talked, dressed, courted, even what we aspired to. My dad, Richard, trailed her shadow, the soft reflection in every choice. And my sibling, Sarah, she was flawless in their eyes. As children, I yearned to craft gowns. I'd cram notebooks with materials and shades. One evening, Mom stumbled on my illustrations, gripped them like proof, then hurled them right into the bin. "You're not squandering your days on daydreams," she stated. My dad merely lingered there, bobbing his head as if in full accord. That instant, I grasped how quiet could preserve harmony. Time wore on. I morphed into their ideal, a bookkeeper, reliable, secure. Sarah headed to university for advertising, imaginative yet proper sounding. When she launched her shop, Mom hosted a bash, bragging about her offspring's ingenuity. I recall observing them raise glasses beneath hanging bulbs, Mom's necklace sparkling as she remarked, "You've always possessed style." Style. The term lingers like a thorn. Mine was forbidden. Then arrived David. Encountered him at a local charity gathering, the type my folks dismissed as rural fluff. He labored for a charity, guiding why. Youth, chuckled freely, posed genuine inquiries. Beside him, I sensed visibility, not as a task, but as an individual. The initial occasion I introduced him at home, Mom's grin halted midway. So she inquired, "What line of work are you in?" As he described, her mouth twisted into something courteous yet icy. "How noble," Dad grumbled. "At least he's decent." Sarah merely murmured, "Goals not required." "Huh?" and snickered. Over 3 years, David endured their subtle disdain alongside me. We organized our nuptials thoughtfully, prudently. The Willow Manor, lovely yet humble, served as our ideal spot. We hoarded each penny on our own. When Mom proposed aid, I wondered if she'd evolved. She claimed she sought the finest for me. I ought to have suspected. That dawn when she summoned me home once more, I imagined it concerned blooms or menu, not conflict. The instant I entered, I sensed it. The strain, the hush prior to the strike. She positioned herself near the hearth, limbs crossed. Sarah lounged on the sofa, thumbing her device. Dad gazed at the carpet. "We're not financing this spectacle," Mom proclaimed. "Tough break this round," Sarah chimed without glancing up. The phrases struck like a buffet, keen, degrading, intentional. Warmth surged in my eyes, yet I concealed it from view. I aligned my spine, inclined my head once, and uttered, "Got it." The space hushed. Mom flickered, puzzled. Sarah grinned, convinced I'd yielded. Yet what they overlooked was that quiet had ceased being my yielding. The ride to my flat seemed infinite. The heavens loomed dense, dull, and weighty, the sort that shrank the globe. My cell vibrated throughout, David dialing, but I couldn't respond. I craved the stillness, the engines droned to anchor me. Upon arriving home, my fingers had quit trembling. Almost. The invites rested on my counter, ivory sheets with gilt edges, our titles etched together. I eyed them endlessly before raking the batch into a carton. It wasn't fury yet, merely void. The sort that lodges in your core like a rock. David arrived that dusk, his expression anxious yet tender. "What went down?" "They pulled the plug," I replied, tonelessly. He paused, pulled the plug. "They can't simply." "They did. Phoned the site, the arranger, all of it. It's over." He advanced, scanning my features. "Want me to confront them?" I declined. "No, now it's my move." That evening, I rummaged an aged compartment. Buried deepest lay my teenage notebook, the one Mom had discarded long back. Corners curled, sheets blurred with graphite strokes. Gowns, jackets, footwear, all the passions I cherished prior to her forbidding them. I followed one outline with my digit, and sensed the scorch of an emotion I'd suppressed for ages. Rebellion. The term got it resounded in my mind. It once signified capitulation. It signified your victory. But not now. Never again. I pondered each got-it I'd voiced when she picked my degree. When she deemed bookkeeping dignified. When she insisted affection ought to resemble wealth and rank. Each got-it was a fragment she'd seized. That dusk I drafted a roster. Each ledger, each payout, each agreement tied to the nuptials. Something rang false, overly exact, overly swift. You don't halt a complete affair that rapidly sans forethought. I rang the Willow Manor come morning. The planner faltered ere replying. Regretful, Ms. Hayes, but your mother dispatched your endorsed withdrawal letter. My what? I probed. She lingered. It bore your mark. The ground appeared to sway underfoot. I expressed thanks, disconnected, and fixed on my image in the shadowed display. Another had mimicked my script. My kin hadn't merely halted my marriage. They'd obliterated me from it wholly. I headed directly to Laura Grant's chambers the subsequent dawn. She'd served as my firm's counsel before, keen and steadfast, the sort of lady seeming courtroom forged. As I recounted the events, she refrained from gasping or scowling. She merely commenced noting. Display the documents, she directed. I proffered every record I held. Deposits, bills, the prime pact for the Willow Manor. Laura sifted each sheet, pen drumming the surface in even cadence. Then she halted. This withdrawal sheet, she whispered, raising it. That's not your script. I bent nearer. My title appeared, scrawled in awkward fluid. My mark, yet false. Laura raised her gaze, her stare piercing. Another mimicked it. And should they wield your fiscal data for dealings, that's illicit. The term illicit struck me like a chill buffet. I faced no mere meddling now. This was pilfering, willful, schemed. We devoted hours dissecting facts. Every exchange, every draw from the marriage fund. And there it emerged. Sums rerouted to Sarah Hayes, fittings for her outlet. Another path traced to my folks' card dealings and residence upgrades. They tapped your funds to mask their shortfalls, Laura noted. And I wager it deepens. That dusk, I perched in gloom with solely my screen illuminating. I reran each instant mentally. Mom's frigid pitch. Sarah's grin. Dad's hush. It aligned perfectly. The marriage wasn't solely a dominance ploy. It masked a concealment. The following day, my cell chimed. Uncle Michael's title glowed on the panel. We hadn't chatted in seasons, but his timbre was taut, restless. Eleanor, there's a detail you ought to hear, he uttered. Concerning your granddad's endowment. I stiffened. What of it? He established it ages past. $250,000. It's yours, yet it stirs solely at your union. Your folks have overseen it and siphoned from it. I verified the logs personally. Breath fled me. You're implying they've tapped it for years, Michael added gently. Sarah's venture, the dwelling revamp, all from your endowment. Had you wed, it'd spark a thorough review. They needed to halt it. I clamped a palm over my lips. My own kin hadn't merely pilfered from me. They raised my prospects to sustain the veil. Post-call, I remained immobile for ages. The rage arrived gradually, soundful. Like a tempest brewing above calm seas. I launched my machine, keyed a note to Laura. We're launching the suit. Then I murmured to the void. They crave dominance. Now they'll taste repercussions. The tribunal carried a whiff of aged sheets and buffed timber. Lines of unknowns murmured behind, the drone of ventilation muffling my pulse. I occupied the accuser's bench next to Laura. My digits interlocked so firmly, my joints throbbed. Opposite, my kin seemed diminished beyond recall. Mom's locks impeccable as ever, but her beads dimmed alike beneath harsh glow. Dad's neckwear askew. Sarah thumbed her gadget till the officer bid her cease. As the magistrate arrived, all rose. Docket 4721. Hayes against Hayes, the aide proclaimed. The phrases pricked deeper than foreseen. Laura initiated serenely. Your Honor, this matter entails the unsanctioned deployment of my ward's monetary holdings and a mimicked mark on lawful papers. We aim to demonstrate that Eleanor Hayes' guardians and kin not merely disrupted her union schemes, but also diverted her legacy. Mom inclined to her counsel, hissing something keen. She disliked yielding narrative reins. Laura outlined it all, the mimicked withdrawal sheet, the fiscal draws, the reroutes, channeled to Sarah's outlet. She distributed duplicates to the magistrate, each leaf falling with a gentle, purposeful pat. Then arrived the endowment. Uncle Michael mounted the platform, seeming uneasy in his garb. My sire, Eleanor's grandsire, formed an endowment of $250,000 for her. It had disbursed at her union. I lately uncovered some's absent. Who drew them? Laura queried. He gulped deeply. Richard and Karen Hayes. The chamber stirred. Mom's advocate protested. Unrelated. The endowment was stewarded under kin privileges. Laura's pitch held steady. Kin privileges exclude deceit. Mom's gaze flicked to me, keen and frosty. You failed to grasp, Eleanor. We aim to shield you. That fellow, David, he's unworthy. He'd haul you under. I held her stare. Shield me via pilfering from me. Her timbre fractured. We merely drew what required. Sarah sank in arrears. We couldn't permit her collapse. Perhaps she ought to have, I replied softly. Perhaps it had imparted what responsibility entails. Sarah pounded her palm on the slab. You deem yourself superior? You've forever been the dull one. Our guardians sacrificed for you. The magistrate tapped his mallet once. Quiet. Laura faced Sarah. Ms. Hayes, did your guardians shift any of your outlet costs from Eleanor's endowment? Sarah wavered, her poise waning. I was unaware of the source. Truly? Laura elevated a record. For this bill for your outlet overhaul cites your sire's mark and Eleanor's endowment digits. Sarah's visage paled. By Laura's case close, all veils lay bared. Mom posed as victim, Dad stuttered feeble regrets, and Sarah wept into a cloth she scarcely employed. As the magistrate at last addressed, his timbre firm, chill, absolute. This bench rules for the accuser. All diverted endowment, sums revert forthwith. Extra reparations of $50,000 awarded for deceit and mental strain. Mom's inhalation caught. Dad's frame sagged. Sarah gaped at me in sheer incredulity. I refrained from grinning. I skipped triumph. I merely breathed freely for the first span in moons. Beyond the hall of justice, the firmament clear, a scarce azure seeming almost contrived. No scribes present. No throng, merely calm. Laura pivoted to me. You succeeded. I merely halted them, I noted. That's sufficient. A week hence, I positioned myself at the Willow Manor anew, the identical arbor where my mother's phrases had lingered, but this instance it was wholly mine. The grounds glowed mildly, surfaces clad in pale cloth, unadorned and refined. David lingered at aisle's close, his band uneven, his beam steadfast. Owen signaled from the rear tier. Uncle Michael offered an approving tilt, and Laura, who seldom beamed, truly did. As melody commenced, my gullet constricted. No mom fussing my headpiece. No dad escorting the path, solely me traversing solo. Each stride seemed like recapturing what they'd seized. As I neared David, he breathed, You all right? I'm beyond all right, I replied and intended it. We voiced pledges softly, not for display, not for outsiders. The leader declared us wed. And briefly, all I heard was breeze through the willow and the subtle echo of mirth, authentic mirth. Post-right, I withdrew momentarily, beneath the selfsame elm where I'd once sobbed after the ruin. I gazed upward at the bulbs and mused on how quiet had turned my blade. My mother once dubbed my union a spectacle. Now it embodied serenity. Within, tunes and coziness saturated the ether. David seized my grip and drew me to sway. The realm hazed. Countenances, glows, the lot. As Eve concluded, I penned a final dispatch. Plain crisp. Karen, Richard, Sarah. The bench exposed your essence. I extend good fortunes, yet this marks farewell. I lingered an instant, then dispatched. Without, locusts droned. David encircled my waist, and for the premier time in years, I sensed unbound. Some weeks later, the rings resumed. First Mom, then Dad, then Sarah. Each deposited a note sounding akin, mellow tones, contrived regrets, a faint quiver for pity. We merely seek dialogue, darling. Might we convene once? Matters escalated unduly. I ignored them. The device hummed on the ledge as I sorted garments, prepared meals, pursued my days. Each pulse seemed feebler prior. Then emerged the recording that halted me. Mom's timbre, frail and weary. Your sire shed his post. Sarah's outlet. Vanished. We're attempting renewal. We require aid. I fixed on the barrier, no rage lingering, merely vacant. They'd seized plenty. From Owen, I subsequently learned the tale. Dad dismissed post-uproar. Mom toiling sporadically at a retail spot. Sarah submerging in deficits. The identical souls who'd once ordained my existence couldn't sustain theirs. One dusk, the rings surged anew, successive. The panel flared with their titles. I grasped it, keyed deliberately, and forwarded one note. The spectacle's capacity reached. Then I set the device screen down, decanted a goblet of vintage, and resumed outlining beneath the mild galley glow. The subsequent morn, daylight flooded the pane, balmy and serene. David brushed my brow ere departing for labor, and I settled at my station amid textile samples and partial outlines. My debut creation series coalesced, mine, untainted. Liberty rang not boisterous. It rang tranquil, firm, merited. I glimpsed my device on the slab. No fresh rings, no regrets, merely quiet. The sort signifying at last tranquility. Mom once deemed my union a spectacle. Perhaps she held truth, for now the performance ended, and I was the one departing with the grin. If you've ever selected self over kin, share below. Tap follow. Another tale awaits.